Hi, my name is David Youngren. I thought I would take a few moments today and talk a bit about the way of love. I'm really excited to share some of the things that have happened in my life and how it means so much to me to be able to help other people experience this incredible presence of love within you. Now, I know some of the language that I use may be foreign to some of you, and I understand that. I appreciate that. If I would have heard some of the things that I talk about today 10 years ago, I probably would have thought the same thing, that this doesn't make any sense to me. This is so beyond anything I thought about before, and I appreciate that. Or maybe some of you are already there, much further ahead than where I am. But even so, I think that all of us are looking for something that is meaningful. We're looking for purpose. We're looking for our lives to matter. We're looking for our lives to have meaning, and we want to live a happy, fulfilled, and satisfied life. We want to enjoy good things, but also more than that, I think all of us want to know the greater meaning of life, that which transcends all things. We talk a lot about God, and I speak a lot about God, and in so many ways I hesitate when I use the word God, because all of us come with certain perception of what that word means. And in my latest book, I actually discuss, and I use many different words for God, because I think it's so difficult to actually explain something that transcends all of us, that is so much bigger than any of us, with one word. It just can't be done. And then some people have a certain image of God, and other people have a different image of God, and so it leads to all this confusion. And that's why I many times don't really like to use the word God. So I rather speak to you from my heart about really my own awakening, so to speak. And I don't do it in any form or fashion to suggest that I am further along than anybody else. I think that would be just my ego that would want to present that, and that's very much what I talk about. So it's more to just share a little bit about my insight, and if maybe you have in a different level, a different stage, and you've experienced something different than I have, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But my whole goal in life is to help people, and to help people experience this rich awareness of love, of God, of a presence that is bigger than any set of thoughts or doctrines or beliefs or systems or religious persuasions. Is something that is much bigger than that, and that's what I hope to communicate with you. And so I thought I would just give you a little bit about my background and maybe learn from that. I haven't actually sat down and written anything down, which I many times do before I speak. I write some notes down so that I basically have, at least in my head, some ideas of where I'm going. So I haven't done that today, but I still think that there are things here today that I want to share with you that will just flow from my heart, and hopefully you'll be able to catch it and it's beneficial to you. Many of you heard my story that in 2005 I left Canada. I was devastated in many different ways. I was under a lot of pressure and had a lot of doubts, a lot of insecurities, a lot of fears, and was very much steeped in and looking back, it's easy to say this. At the time, I didn't see it, but very much a religious system. And I didn't realize the control that this religious system had on the way I acted, what I did, and the way I lived, and how much of a negative impact it had on me. It's easy to look back and see it afterwards, but I didn't realize at the time. I thought, everything was going good, everything was fine, but inside I was struggling with all these toxic emotions, and I came to the point where I started having cluster headaches, and I didn't know what to do, and prayed. I did everything I kind of knew how to do based on the beliefs that I had at the time, but I didn't get any better. I got worse, and it was so severe, the pain, that I felt like someone was sticking a knife in and twist the knife around, and rather than getting better, I got worse. And I would pray some more. I would pray harder. I would condemn myself. I didn't have enough faith. I would not necessarily condemn myself outright. It wasn't like a conscious thought, but I would feel the condemnation inside, like there's something missing in your life, David. There's something that you're doing wrong. Maybe there's some things in your life, and that's the reason why you're dealing with all this, these cluster headaches. At the same time, I was dealing with other emotions that was more self-righteous ones, that other people had done me wrong, and they were the ones at fault, and they were the ones that caused me the stress. So I was dealing with basically two set of thoughts. One was self-righteousness, and one was this, that other people was at fault and that I was fine. But then there was this other thought that I condemned myself, and it's almost like a self-loathing. So they were almost like two polar opposites that someone other gave me, looking for the answers why I was going through what I was going through. I needed something there to pinpoint what the root problem was. But none of that made me better. I tried everything I knew how to try. And then I simply had this out of nowhere. It's so strange for me, even looking back today, that to think of where it came from, why I had this thought. But I look back at it now, and I think it was something from deep within me, and understanding this presence of love just began to fill me to the point where I was ready to try anything. And so I just felt this inner prompting to meditate on divine love. And for me, at the time specifically, but even to this day, I'm so mesmerized, and I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I think it's a pretty good word. I'm mesmerized by this incredible love that we see in Jesus on the cross, and how he lays down his life, and how he acts in such a incredible fashion toward the people who accused him, the people who condemned him, the people who hung him on that cross. How he exemplifies love, selfless, universal, and unconditional love like I had never seen before, or I think we've ever seen in history. And so I began to meditate on that, and it was like this presence would come upon me, and this presence of love, and within 2 or 3 minutes of beginning to do this, I was completely healed. Now you say, was this a supernatural thing? No, I think anything can be supernatural, but I think it was supernaturally natural. And what I mean by that is that the fear that had lodged itself in my brain, that was so dominating my thought life, was suddenly freed. Like it was this blockage in my brain, whatever, just was gone, because I became aware of this presence of love. And since that time, my life has radically changed. And it started slowly in the beginning, but gradually I began to change, and I began to see a difference in my life, and that I became more of a loving person. I'm not suggesting that I'm, by any stretch of the imagination, has arrived, that I'm some wonderful hero. That's not what I'm trying to suggest to you at all. I hope you understand my heart. I hope you catch my heart. But I began to see that there was this like awareness of love in my life that actually changed my instincts and my thoughts and the ideas that I had, and it like completely changed me, because as I meditated on this love, it was just like even my brain, it seemed like my brain was actually evolving, that my brain was changing. And I learned later on that it's actually scientifically proven that it does change your brain. When you meditate on loving kindness, it does change your brain. So and so even though that may seem like just scientific, but at the same time, I think this is something very spiritual here as well for all of us. And in the midst of this, I started having this new understanding of God, what God is, and it so changed my life. The Bible says this, and some of you are familiar with the Bible know this, that God is love. And of course, in so many ways it doesn't make sense, but we throw that at God is love. But what does that mean? What does that actually mean? His very essence is love. It doesn't say that he has love. It says that he is love. If you have something, that means you can give it away, or you can actually lose it. But if you are something, it's your very essence, it's your identity, it's your very being. And to that, having that understanding completely changed what I saw love as. And then I began to look at all the times in my life when I had really experienced this presence of love in my life, when I had been aware of this selfless, universal, unconditional love in my life. It always involved moments when I was dealing with a lot of guilt, and suddenly I felt the freedom from the guilt, or there was dealing with some shame in my life, and suddenly I felt like this hope and a new beginning in my life, and I would experience this incredible love, and I thought, well, this is really weird. And this word forgiveness, when I would receive forgiveness, when I would literally feel like I was forgiven, then I would experience this rush, this moment of love that was so transformative, but it wouldn't last because these thoughts would reoccur again, and then I would fall back into the same negative thought patterns, and I began to question what I believe. Why wasn't it working? It was like these moments of incredible rush of accelerating joy, but then there were moments of total despair and agony and saying this doesn't work. And I thought, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more to this Jesus, to this God, to this understanding spirituality than this. And I came to recognize that, the ego. And I began to understand the ego. That was a major shift in my life when I began to understand the I, as Paul says, it's no longer I that live. And the word here for I is Greek. The Greek word for I is ego. And the word ego means to conceptualize self, the perception you have of yourself, the way you feel about yourself, the ideas that you have about yourself. It is your sense of identity that is rooted in thoughts. So we have all these thoughts that we have accumulated over our entire life that has created this feeling inside of us of who we are. And so, for example, the more we've experienced trauma in our life, it has now lodged itself in our long-term memories in our subconscious, and not only the memory of the trauma is there, but actually the initial feeling that we had has also been lodged into our long-term memory, into our subconscious. And so that has now formed our sense of self, and that has created a fear. That's created a fear pattern, a shame pattern in your subconscious that now drives what you do, that controls what you do, controls the kind of life you live, controls the emotions you have, controls the thoughts you have, controls the beliefs you have. And I began to realize that the ego is what hinders people from being aware of God. The ego tries to be good and tries to earn love by being good. It tries to stand out, to win, to be superior, to be the best. And the way it does that is by achieving more than others. It compares itself against others, and then it seeks to perform better so that it can be recognized and acknowledged and given its status and its sense of value. And so that's the ego. And I realize that the ego there's this religious ego that most religions are based on, that seeks to say, well, you follow these rules, you follow this, or this formula, you follow this, you do this, you believe this. And if you believe this, if you align your thoughts this particular way, then you be good enough for God. Now, of course, it's not that, it's not what we say. It seems like simplified to put it in those terms, but actually if you begin to analyze religions, even people of grace are the same way. In other words, you align your beliefs a certain way, then you will come to this place of joy, peace, and happiness, and your life is going to be great. But for most of us, it doesn't happen that way because our perception is still based on the ego, that it's thoughts or is you somehow or another gaining the right thoughts that will get you to know God. But that's a lie, and that doesn't work. And I tried that. I've been through every spiritual doctrinal belief system to know that none of it worked for me. It works for a period of time. It may work for a year, or it may work for a month, but ultimately it will always leave you wanting more. There's always something missing. So I've been on this journey for more years than I want to admit to on this video. It doesn't really matter, but you know what I'm talking about. What I began to realize that God is not there. God is not in ideas. God is not in thoughts. God is not in a belief system. That God is experience, an experience. It's a presence. It is an awareness. And you know that you're aware, you're aware of the presence when you experience love. When you experience selfless, unconditional love, do you know that you are aware of the presence that is always with you, but your mind, your ego, has somehow or another blinded us to this unconditional, selfless love. So the whole point of everything that we're doing, this is why meditation is so powerful. When we begin to meditate, what are we doing? We are quieting our minds, we are quieting our thoughts, and we come to that point where we literally let go of guilt, let go of our shame, and we just are. We just become present. We are aware. And the more you become present, what you will notice is this incredible awareness of love. It feels like this peace that just embraces you, flows through you, surrounds you, and you're just aware of something that is transcending all things, this being, love, that somehow or another united to that, you're one with that. Your mind can't comprehend it. Your thoughts will try to make sense of it, and your thoughts will always try to get you to do something to get to that point. Reality is, it's just letting go of thoughts and becoming aware of it. Now, we can talk about how do we get there, and I know many people are not able to let go of their thoughts because a lot of times it's driven by guilt, and I think that guilt is always opposite of unconditional love, by the way, because the moment you feel guilty, you are suggesting that, or you are saying indirectly that I'm not worthy of unconditional love. So as your thought that it says I'm guilty, I'm shameful, there's something wrong with me, I'm sinful, I'm this, I'm that, and everything else. And you can never come to complete awareness of love at that moment because it will reject unconditional love. It rejects selfless love. It rejects this presence that is always there. It always seeks to get somewhere with your thoughts, with your ideas, with your beliefs, with your systems, with your religions, with your faith, and as some kind of a mental concept. That's not God. God is an experience. But not just an experience. It's a presence. God is presence, is being. And that being is something that we experience. It's something that we experience that is beyond thoughts, that is beyond ideas, that is beyond anything that we can concoct in our own mind. It's just being aware of it. And so for me, I many different ways that I can do this, but me coming from a Christian background, and to me the communion symbolizes many different things. And lately I've been what I call the communion, doing the communion, the cup and the bread, and I'm taking it to a much deeper level than just taking a cup and taking the bread. I don't even do that. I just imagine sitting in the presence of Jesus, and Jesus literally handing me the cup, and I sit around all the people that I care about, people who don't like me, doesn't matter. I'm sitting in a circle and Jesus is there, and somehow or another I have this great love for everybody, and I imagine this, and I take the cup, and the cup represents to me the need of my ego to feel that I'm justified again, that I am worthy to receive love, unconditional love. How can you ever be worthy to receive unconditional love? It's just, you just receive it anyhow. But the cup represents that. It's what your ego needs, it's what your mind needs to satisfy itself, to feel like I'm worthy of that. So I would suggest this is a good place for many people to start. Just take that cup, imagine that cup and receiving it, and feeling this cleansing within you of the guilt and the shame that you're dealing with, so that you feel like, I can come into the presence. And then when you come into the presence, you're just sitting there, you're just aware of that presence. And when you're aware of that presence, you take the bread, and Jesus hands you the bread, and he breaks it and he gives to each person, because we're all part of the same body, we're all part of the universe, we're all one together. And Christ is in me, He is in them. Christ is all and in all. We begin to see this reality, and it transforms our life, and it changes how we live. And so I don't know if this makes sense to you, or you think this is crazy, but this will change how you read spiritual literature, how you think about God, how you think about a place of worship. It will change everything. And most of all, it will change your inner being. And so I'm committed to helping people, because it hurts me, it pains me to say this, but I've been in church for a long time. I've been a pastor for many years. And 2016, I stopped being a pastor. But, and you say, well, your life has just gone in the wrong direction since you stopped being a pastor. The opposite is the case. I feel more of a presence of God, of this transcending presence than ever in my life. And it's not because I stopped going to church, it's because I stopped thinking that church is the answer, that believing a certain thing, a certain way is the answer. I believe church has a purpose, and whenever people gather together, it has a great purpose. People can express love to one another. People can be conduits of love to the world, to people who in communities, and I think that's very, very important, but not as the answer to all your problems. And believing a certain way and taking what someone speaks about and saying, this is what you need to do now. No, it's your spiritual life is about experiencing this presence of love. It's mystical, it's mysterious, it's beyond your intellect, it's beyond thoughts. It's just knowing, being aware of something that is bigger than any one of us. And so that's really my story. I hope this made sense to you, but this is, to me, is the way of love. And it's, as I said, it's bigger than institutional religion. It's bigger than religion. It's bigger than our egoic thoughts and thought patterns. It's bigger than any of that. It's just coming to a place of peace within, where you begin to experience grace. And when you experience grace, you become aware of this transcending presence, love. This transcending presence called God, that we call God, that permeates with love. And the moment that you experience that, you feel this peace. And the more you experience it, the more your thoughts and your feelings are transformed. And I think it's a path to a better world. Anyhow, those are my thoughts for today. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for listening.